Good morning. Welcome to Radio Maria Ireland. Father Eamonn McCarthy with you here as always. Should have cleared my throat first. Here we go. Excuse me. You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us here for Chatechesis here at this usual slot each morning, weekday morning of the week at any rate, apart from Mondays. So lovely to have you with us on Facebook Live and YouTube Live too if you want to watch in and join in and see the face behind the voice. You're very welcome to, and see a little corner of the studio here. This is the guest studio where I'm speaking to you from today. Now we like that we don't do all the talking. We would like you indeed to do some of the talking and share in some of the workload here by participating with us as always. And those numbers 089 467 2000 to text and WhatsApp us plus 35389 467 2000 to text or WhatsApp us here. Email us on info@radiomaria.ie and give the studio here a call on the landline 014 123 456 plus 353 14123 456. Very simple numbers there. And you can drop us a line too, please do, at St. Anthony's Business Park, Ballymount Road, Dublin 22. We do like to hear from you. Do stay tuned with us a little bit later on. Father La is going to join me. I think it's Father La Flynn will join us from Lough Derg. There'll be an online pilgrimage to Lough Derg starting tomorrow, going through Saturday and Sunday, where at home you can participate in the pilgrimage with some of the usual fasting and prayers that accompany it, and the sleepless night too, in the comfort of your own home. Makes it a bit easier, I suppose. But you can take off the shoes and socks. You can fast indeed on black tea and bread, I think it is, so that usual fast there, and participate in the prayers, the stations as they're known, or the beds as they're sometimes known too, just the prolonged time of staying awake and praying in the presence of the Lord. So that's going to be possible online, and you can join with the team at Lough Derg for that. So Father La is going to chat with me about that coming up after our little song break today. So have a listen in, and maybe you're one of those people who have done Lough Derg in the past. Maybe you've never done Lough Derg and would like to know about it. It's a little island in Donegal there. Petticoat is the place to drive to find it. Out on the lake, and you get a boat out onto the lake and into the island. There's no Wi-Fi, no signal of any kind by way of telephones and so on. So it means you're cut off nicely from the mainland. You're cut off from communications, and you're left on your own resources, maybe like the monks of old, and hungry and tired and praying constantly. It's quite a purifying experience, it is. We'll hear more about that a little bit later on. Maybe a few words first, if we dare, about St. Oliver Plunkett. And he was a priest and Archbishop of Armagh around the time of the Cromwellian persecution of the church here in Ireland. And this is an ignominious and infamous time in our history when many were sorely tried and persecuted and either put to death or exiled from our country forever, or what was the expression, to hell or to Connachts, all of those who were protesting in any way and, reacting, or any revolutionary influential types shipped off to the west of Ireland and or sent off in slavery to the West Indies and other colonies, off to Australia too. So it was a dark time in Irish history, the time of the Mass Rocks too, and the time of hiding priests. To be a priest was, as St. Oliver Plunkett put it in his letters for us, considered a lese majesty, that is a treasonable offence against the King of England at the time. So again, a very dark time, and St. Oliver Plunkett unjustly put to death and martyred. So he was the Archbishop of Armagh, born of a noble royalist family in County Meath. So it's actually a feast day today in Meath and in Armagh. He studied under Jesuit guidance at the Irish College in Rome, and from 1645, at the expense of the Oratorian Pier Francesco Scarampi, who had been a papal envoy to the Irish Confederate Party. After brilliant academic success in theology and law, he was ordained a priest in 1654, and became Professor of Theology at the Propaganda College and the Procurator of the Irish Bishops. So a man of some standing indeed in the theological academic life of Rome at the time. In 1669 he was appointed Archbishop of Armagh and was consecrated at Ghent. I think Ghent is in Belgium if I'm not mistaken, possibly Holland maybe, and reached Dublin via London, where he was favourably received by Charles II's Queen, Catherine of Braganza, whose influence he sought for mitigating the severity of the penal laws against Catholics. So there was political interchange going on to try to mitigate some of the terrible suffering that was being inflicted upon the Irish Catholic people. There was a kind of ambiguity too, because to be seen to be Catholic was seen to be kind of nationalist, and there was a political overtone to it, and to be anti-loyalist, let's say, or anti-unionist, in whatever way that you might describe that today, which is not the healthiest of understandings, because the two can be separate in that instance. You know, to be Catholic doesn't necessarily mean to be nationalist. It means to be universalist, if you want. But that distinction is used and maybe twisted perhaps sometimes even today. Oliver was one of only 2 Catholic bishops in Ireland. Disorder and neglect had become the almost inevitable results of long-standing persecution. So the church was a bit in disarray. I wonder if we're seeing a little bit of that today now as well, a bit of disintegration of the life of the church today, sadly. Even the sacrament of confirmation had been largely neglected owing to the shortage of bishops. Does that sound a little familiar today as well? Not due to a shortage of bishops, however. Within the first few months of his rule, Oliver Plunkett confirmed 10,000 people and also had a provincial synod. That's very interesting. That's a large number of people. And of course there is speak indeed of a synod in Ireland here soon to be convened through the bishops. In face of these difficulties, the Catholics were divided among themselves by long-standing disputes about the primacy of Armagh over Dublin, and later by some Franciscans who delated Oliver Plunkett to Rome. There's a mistake there. What is that word? I don't know. Who delated? Maybe they condemned him, is what they're saying. He was, however, completely vindicated by the Holy See. Excuse me. So obviously he had his opposition and his opposers, and the Holy See upheld his ordination. His policy was to promulgate the decrees of the Council of Trent, to maintain discipline among the diocesan clergy, and better observance among the regulars, who I presume were the Franciscans, maybe Dominicans like that, religious, and to improve educational standards by the Jesuit College at Drogheda. The recognition of papal authority and jurisdiction made him liable to severe penalties, but he managed to remain on friendly terms with the Protestant clergy and gentry of Ulster. Their high regard for him was a measure of the excellence of his character and achievements. So these things are possible, to somehow tie together the political realm with that of the religious. Maybe when it's seen to be that the religious dimension of things is not trying to usurp political authority or political power. That might be the ingredient, that if it's a question of faith, that it remains in the realm of faith, but that faith can inform politics, and faith certainly can inform morality by way of political activity. It should do, but not that it is, again, intended as a political end. That frog, he's a friendly fella. The panic caused by the false allegations of Titus Oates, as a familiar name in history, in 1678 resulted in the arrest of Oliver Plunkett. Was Titus Oates to do with the plot, wasn't it, the gunpowder plot and all those things back, if you remember your history? I have only vague recollections myself now from my history classes in school. He was arrested and charged at Dundalk with plotting to bring 20,000 French soldiers into Ireland and levying a tax on the poverty-stricken clergy to support 70,000 armed men. Such an absurd charge had no chance of sticking in Ireland, so Plunkett was moved to Newgate, where he was imprisoned until 1681. So the Newgate prison, I thought it was the Tower. Although the court's jurisdiction over Irish affairs was doubtful, the false witnesses of two apostate Irish friars, nonetheless, together with the bias of the judge, resulted in a conviction for high treason. Sir Francis Pemberton, the judge, sorry, kicking the desk under me here, said the foundation of his treason was setting up a false religion, which was the most dishonourable and derogatory to God of all religions. Real hatred there for Catholicism, which of course, Henry VIII was a Catholic. And the logic of that, where does that go? Extraordinary. And that a greater crime could not be committed against God than for a man to endeavour to propagate that religion. And that's just out and out, what's the word for that, sectarianism, isn't it? The true reason for his condemnation being thus clearly stated, he was condemned to be hanged, drawn and quartered. So obviously most certainly a martyr for the faith and not for a political cause. The sentence was executed at Tyburn on the 1st of July. His body was taken to Lamp Spring Abbey in 1684. It is now at Downside Abbey in Somerset, while his head is in the Oliver Plunkett Memorial Church in Drogheda. Well, it's St. Peter's Church, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. Canonised in 1976. So I haven't been to Downside. I don't have been to Downside. No, I don't think I've ever been to Downside Abbey. Sounds like worthy of a pilgrimage, certainly, there in Somerset. Terribly unjust, the whole thing, really, but a great witness to the faith, as indeed so many of these great martyrs. And we're called today, the very same way, it's challenging times, to bear witness in the same way. Perhaps not to being hung, drawn and quartered. I don't know if I told you, if you haven't been to visit the site of the Tyburn tree. I remember my early years in London. I mentioned before, we used to go to Speaker's Corner and pray the Rosary group for us in the Legion of Mary. And I'm sure they still do it to this day. I think Father Thwaites was a great advocate indeed of public rosary there. And with us there would be a small group from the Catholic Evidence Guild speaking and defending the Catholic faith as well at Speaker's Corner. But I just remember one day Father Thwaites took us, and maybe he had mentioned it, and I said, look, where is it? I'd love to see it. The site of the Tyburn tree, because Speaker's Corner is at the corner, literally at the junction of Oxford Street and the Edgware Road. Edgware Road is heading north, London up towards Edgware, up to what's the station up there? Paddington Station, isn't it? Is up that way. And Lord's Cricket Ground and so on, North London. And then east-west would be Oxford Street. And at that junction there's a traffic island there, which has got railings on it. It's a small little triangle in the road. It's no more than, I suppose, a couple of feet sort of in each direction of the triangle. And in the middle of that, 2 or 3 feet maybe, is a silver plaque, probably about 8 inches across. Maybe, if you wrap your fingers around it, kind of, and across in the middle, and it just says site of the Tyburn tree. That's it. No word or history or plaque or anything else to tell you all the ignominy that came to pass there. The history of it is books have been written, and this is always, it struck me, and maybe they've changed it since. I doubt it, but somebody maybe can tell me. It just struck me how insignificant. I just remember Father Thwaites, as wonderful priest, kneeling down and kissing the plaque, and I think we all followed suit. And the traffic whizzing past us on either side to commemorate the witness of these great martyrs in this site. Of course, he being a Jesuit himself, Father Thwaites, and Farm Street Church, not that far away, a Jesuit house. I think he may have been based there for a time himself. In true sort of Jesuitical style. He had great conviction, great determination, a tremendous figure. He was actually himself a convert from Protestantism, and so knew well the gift of faith, and vigorous, certainly in his defending of the Catholic faith, and described his own journey in coming to, I suppose, have devotion to Our Blessed Lady and praying the Rosary. You know, it's a struggle for him as a Protestant. Very interesting. So St. Oliver Plunkett, pray for us, pray for Ireland. We're having to witness today. We're not having to shed our blood. We, please God, hope that will never come to pass. But certainly there is no shortage of antipathy towards the church and towards faith in some quarters. I might say probably small enough groups, but with very loud voices and with wide influence are those who have little time for the faith and celebrate all things liberal. And it's sad to see because again what we see happening there is that follow the logic through. You know, by all means go ahead and live a liberal life, but where will it take you? What path, what road will that take you on? And inevitably it seems that that kind of liberality becomes license rather than freedom. You know, it becomes slavery rather than freedom. A slavery to self, the cult of self, the cult of indulgence and satisfying pleasures and perceived needs, and the lust for power, wealth. All of these things seem to be an inevitable concomitant with that liberal journey. And because God is excluded, then the human person is lessened in dignity. It becomes a kind of survival of the fittest, and the strongest over the weakest, the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer. And that seems to be the inevitable direction, that kind of liberal thinking. We'll have to turn back the pages of history to see that kind of thing at work. And where does it lead in the end? To destruction, really. And we're seeing it in the wholesale destruction of unborn life now. It's been legalized in our country, and the figures have been published this week for last year. So since the introduction of legalized destruction of unborn life in the womb, over 13,000 babies, Irish babies, have lost their lives. What an immense tragedy for this life and these beautiful babies. And what an immense sadness for these mothers and fathers and their families. And what a terrible wound to the side of our society. I can never follow the logic of those in political authority who advocate for this kind of thing. And I've confronted one or two in my time to say, look, how can you justify the destruction of your future electorate? Are these not the people you want to vote for you in the future to stay in office? And then the emphasis of the conversation goes back on, well, it's a right to choose, and it's a right for who? Again, the logic is, and it's so hard to seems to get through at that level of reason. It seems to the margins based almost entirely on emotion. And if we just throw reason out the door, if the baby in the womb becomes a thing, an object, something disposable, these are the great, tragedy of our own times. We might look back at the times of St. Oliver Plunkett and look at the penal laws and everything else that was accompanying that. But we've got our own slavery today. We've got our own injustice today. We've got our own hatred of life and of God. It's around us, and now is our turn. This is our time to roll up the sleeves in prayer, in fasting. We'll speak about that in relation to Loch Derg, and in witnessing, like St. Oliver Plunkett. That's the challenge, and it is no easy challenge. And so, thanks be to God, we have a gift and a blessing like the radio. We're not here in opposition or competition with anyone, especially just to be a gentle voice of truth, a voice of prayer, a voice of companionship for so many. So this is our task. So now I'm going to pause for a little piece of music. Do please get in touch with us. We'll speak to Father La after our song break. But the number is, again, as always, 089-467-2000. Email info@radiomaria.ie and give us a call right now on the telephone 014-123-456. Again, from the north, outside of Ireland, +353 14123-456 to give us a call here now. And to share with us indeed your thoughts, to text us in maybe your questions too, or what do you think about all that is happening in these days, and what challenges do you face, and how are you experiencing God's grace as well? Now, Father Liam Lawton, appropriate song Aidan has chosen for us there in the quiet, anticipating our 3-day Loch Derg pilgrimage that's open to all online. So do please stay with us to enjoy this lovely piece of music. I'm back very shortly with Father Lar.
Leaves are fallen and the branches bare. Winter is calling and chills the silent air. When the moon is covered by shadows of the night, you will hear me calling if you come into the quiet. Be still, oh, be still, for I am your God. Still, I will listen, so you will hear my word. Still, oh, be still, deep within your eye, for you will find me in the
When souls are hurting and they don't know why, when hearts are broken and children have to cry, when prayers are spoken late into the night, you will find your answer if you come into the quiet.
Still, oh, be still, for I am your God. Be still, I will listen, and you will hear my word. Still, oh, be still, deep within your eye, for you will find me in the
Yes, 50 seconds to go and he's on the line.
He's on, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Still, oh, be still, for I am your God. Still, I will listen, so you will hear my word. Still, oh, be still, deep within your eye, for you will find me in the
Now, Liam Lawton there, be still in the night, in the quiet, I think, too. Welcome back to Radio Maria Ireland. Father Eamonn with you. Shout out to everybody on Facebook and YouTube watching in as well at this time. Nice to have your company. Now, the pilgrimage to Loch Derg is available to one and all. And Monsignor La Flynn, the prior of Loch Derg and administrator of Pettigo Parish, there is on the line to chat with me. Good morning, Father La.
Poor Father Eamonn.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Did you get your frog sorted out?
I did. He kind of he
he was
left
a very
out.
troublesome fellow, that frog.
He arrives
I was
about
listening-
11:15 every morning.
You bit of martyrdom there as you were talking about Oliver Plunkett.
I know. Doing my best to try to get the story out.
Wasn't going to let you go.
No, not to worry. But listen, Father Lad, it's great that Loch Derg is continuing in spite of the fact that restrictions prevent people from actually visiting the island. The pilgrimage is wide open to one and all.
Yes, it is in this unusual way. We did this last year, Father Eamonn, and there was a precedent from it. 100 years ago in the times, the troubled times of that, there were a number of prisoners who were interned, and their chaplain asked if they could have, this was in County Down, Ballykinler camp,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a second event on a prison ship actually in Loch Derg, Loch the Argenta, I think it was called, these prisoners got permission to do the pilgrimage where they were. Obviously, as prisoners, they couldn't come to the island. And so, when we found ourselves in the situation last year that people couldn't come to the island, it came to us that perhaps we could offer people the opportunity to do the pilgrimage where they are. So, I myself, last year, it was the last weekend in June last year, first weekend in June this year, beginning on Saturday, Sunday, finishing Monday morning. Here, I'm actually living on the island myself, came here at the beginning of June, and each morning after morning mass I slip out of my sandals and do a station on the beds, just as a little witness to the continuity of prayer here at Loch Derg. But I'm going to do the full pilgrimage. I'll have 3 companions with me, and I'm inviting anybody who has the I don't know if you could talk about an appetite for Loch Derg, but
Good
anyone
word.
that has the appetite for it can register to do the pilgrimage where they are. Now it's in fact some of the feedback we got last year was a number of people saying to us that in fact they actually found it nearly more challenging kind of at home than they would if they were on the island. So it means bare feet, and it means fasting, and it means the 24-hour vigil and the station prayers. People who are regulars to Loch Derg, or even who have been here occasionally, will know all of that. And so last year we had over 1,000 people registered for it. Now, last year, kind of, it was still fairly much we were still fairly much in a tough enough lockdown situation. So I suppose maybe part of the what was going on, Father Eamonn, was that people were where they were and couldn't much go anywhere. But I don't know what our registrations are for this year as of now. But a few days ago, I know that Maureen, who coordinates that side, told me that it was 400 and something people had registered to join me from wherever they are. Yeah.
Marvelous. Maybe if you would, Father, I'm mindful that we have a number of international listeners, and we play these recordings back as well, and put them up as podcasts. But there might be those who've never heard of Loch Derg, have no idea what is all this about. Maybe a quick overview for those new to the pilgrimage to Loch Derg.
Okay, I'll certainly have a go at that. Historically, the story of Loch Derg goes back to the 12th century, when it became famous across Europe as St. Patrick's Purgatory. And there were 30 over the Middle Ages, and I think maybe 37 or 38, a fairly high status named people from Europe that we have records of that came here. Now at that stage, Ireland was at the edge of the world, and Loch Derg here in northwest Ireland is sort of at the edge of Ireland. And the medieval imagination seems to believe that in this extreme location, it actually was possible, if you like, to go beyond this world and perhaps have some experience of purgatory. So there was a cave here on this island that was known as St. Patrick's Purgatory, and as I say, people came here on pilgrimage. Now, before that, there would have been a tradition of much more local pilgrimage, just to the Celtic monastery that was here. And then the talk about Oliver Plunkett there in the penal times, obviously the monastery was closed, the place was confiscated, but the pilgrimage continued in a transformed version where people make a pattern of repeated vocal prayer and walk barefoot around the remains of the the huts, the stone remains of the huts of the Celtic monks.
Mhm.
And that form of prayer has continued right to modern times. We would have almost 5,000 people in a year who make that traditional pilgrimage between the 1st of June and the 15th of August. We have others, about the same number or a few more, that come for a one-day retreat without having to take off their shoes. So it's a very long-standing place of pilgrimage, and we would have significant numbers of people for whom it is part of their routine, who come every year, who perhaps have a strong family tradition of being here. Their parents or grandparents did it. So in that sense, there are people who really, it's kind of they take it as their annual retreat experience, and I suppose these in particular are people who appreciate the chance to do Loch Derg from where they are. I know that last year we had, and again this year we have. You're speaking about your own international reach on Radio Maria. We certainly have. Again, the last time that I heard Maureen talk about it, I think she said 13 different countries overseas have people who have registered for to join us on the pilgrimage over the coming weekend. Yeah.
That's marvellous to hear. Gosh, excellent. And it's interesting that too the profile of those who would go on pilgrimage is quite much across the board. I know that students this time of year have been known certainly to come on pilgrimage there. Particularly, it's interesting to see.
Yes, I suppose now when I was a youngster, and even just not today or yesterday, but even so that, like, I mean, it was a thing that perhaps particularly in an exam year, students might come. But more recently, it's moved from, if you like, younger students, secondary school students, to quite a number of third-level students who are faithfully with us. We actually have. This is not part of our general program, but we're taking the opportunity, since the island is closed to our usual numbers and so on, to experiment a little bit perhaps with residential retreats, and we have two retreats being offered to young adults. We had places for about, now they're not, we weren't publishing them generally. We're sort of workshopping this, seeing if it would work, but we have filled 16 places on both of those, and most of these are third-level students or recent graduates or people who are starting out their work and so on, and very keen. We got a bit of coverage a few years on, it could be 3 years ago now, in the Irish Times, kind of a colour piece in the supplement one weekend. But the line that the writer usually described it as the Iron Man of pilgrimages. It's quite rigorous, but we actually used that title ourselves, and again, with young people who are game for a challenge and so on, it seemed to very much to register with them,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. I've heard of people, who I think there's a name for even beyond the Iron Man experience. Those who come off the island after 3 days and come back on again. There's a name for that too.
That's practically unheard of now at this stage. That doesn't so often happen, and certainly we would be dissuading people who would be coming with that kind of enthusiasm.
Sure, pretty intense. Give us an idea, please, Father Lam, maybe just the breakdown for the 3 days. I know the proposal is starting midnight tomorrow night.
That's right. So the fast is a 3-day fast beginning from midnight tomorrow night. There's one meal permitted each day, one very simple Loch Derg style meal. People, then there are 9, the station prayer, which takes about an hour or so. It's a pattern of very simple traditional prayers, the Lord's Prayer, the Hail Mary, and the Creed, and takes about an hour to complete a station prayer. And it involves not only saying the prayers, but walking and kneeling in the same pattern that people do when they're here in the penitential beds. There is a vigil from 9 o'clock on the evening of the first day, so that would be 9 o'clock on Saturday evening, until 9 o'clock on Sunday evening, when people do all they can to stay awake, to deprive themselves from sleep. And during the night, there are 4 of those station prayers which help to create solidarity and to pass the time and to keep the thing going. Now, I myself will be on the island here, as I say, with a few companions, but we don't have a good enough internet connection here to be able to offer a link to the island. But in the parish church in Pettico, Mary McDade, who's a very well known to our regular pilgrims, she's a standard member of our team here. She and 3 of these young people that we were referring to there, who have been on our team, 2 of them have been involved in the music ministry, and a third has been involved in as the sacristan, and they'll be accompanying Mary, making the pilgrimage in the parish church in Pettico, and that will be going out on the webcam in the church there as a support for people who want to tune in that way, and
I suppose it might be
the sense of solidarity, and they're not on their own. And then the second night, that would be then Sunday night in this case, people are very glad to go to their beds, and then on Monday morning there's just one final station. The fast continues for Monday, but as the day goes on Monday, people are free to put their footwear on again, and there's nothing required in terms of, apart from keeping the fast. Yeah.
Sure. So all day Saturday from midnight, Friday night, let's say, all day Sunday, and all day Monday too. But probably the difficult part there is the overnight section there, the Saturday night, deprived of sleep. Yes.
And I suppose putting down the long day on Sunday when you can't sleep, you know. Yes.
Yes.
And the registration is still open, Father Eamonn. The simplest way is to email info@lochderg.org, info@lochderg.org, or you can ring Maureen on 071 9861518, 9861518, and as the registration will be open until I think it's maybe 10 o'clock tomorrow night, and there's a pack then can go out online so people have what they need in terms of instructions and support and so on.
Good, excellent. I might spell it out for listeners too. LOUGHDEORG, Lochderg is the spelling there, lochderg.org. And maybe it's an idea, maybe as people are tuning in or joining in remotely, if they're having the shoes and socks off, they might sort of open up the back door and head out quietly during the night, maybe to a station. It might be a kind of a solidarity, because 2 of the elements of penitence in Lochderg is either the cold, or the rain, or the midges.
Oh, the midges! Yes, I had some of those this morning,
Yes.
but I was I never head out to the penitential beds now in the mornings without one of these little nets in my pocket that I can slip over my head and stave off our famous Lochderg midges. There was a priest who worked with me here one time, and he used to joke the pilgrims. He said that we have a very special midge on Lochderg. He said, and it's a distinctive zoological characteristic is that it's 95% jaw.
That's good.
It certainly feels like that at times. Have you ever been here yourself?
I've done it once many years ago. I'm long overdue a return visit. And I just remember the sleep on the second night was just unbelievable. I hit the pillow and 3 seconds later woken up with the bell in the morning.
Absolutely, that's very much a shared experience. Yes, indeed. Another thing that we were just talking, you mentioned there about the fact that we're not open for our usual pilgrimages, but we have on the shore a pilgrim path. Now, it's essentially at one level it's a walking trail. It's 12 kilometer loop, or there's a shorter 8-kilometer loop. And last year we were inviting people to come, and since they couldn't cross to the island, because that's all outdoors and so on, to come and walk that path in a spirit of pilgrimage. Part of it goes back actually to the Middle Ages, to those people I was talking about, that they used it as their route to Lough Derg. But it's mainly on forest trails, and it's very accessible and so on. And that's open all the time, and no booking is needed. Anybody wants to come and pray the pilgrim path, they're very welcome to do that. And we will have, as the summer goes on, a few days when we will be accompanying people who want that kind of experience. But it's open for people just to turn up and to come. Yeah.
Good, fantastic. Well, listen, Father, thanks very much for joining and sharing that with us. We'll replay this audio clips, I say, and make it available as a podcast. Just chatting with Aidan there, we'll try and see, can we just merge in some of your online activity there with some of our broadcasting as well, just to connect in at some stage over the few days.
Appreciate that, Father Eamonn.
Good, so listen, well done. So again, info@lochderg.org is the place to go to register. And every grace and blessing on your marvellous work. It's never been as needed, I don't think, prayer and penance. Father Law.
Good, and I'll remember one for you and for all your colleagues there at Radio Maria, and for your listeners.
Thanks so much indeed. God bless you, Father Law.
Good.
Thanks for joining me, Slán and Ish Cormagans. Very good. Monsignor Flynn there, the prior of Lough Derg and the administrator of Petticoat Parish there. It's in northwest corner there of Ireland, Donegal, and a beautiful place to actually visit indeed, and well known as a place of pilgrimage. In fact, it's from what he was saying, they must have been alive and well and very active around the time of Cromwell and the martyrdom of Oliver Plunkett too. Just mindful that, you know, it transcends those centuries, and extraordinary, and no doubt the people there and the religious life that went on there, and nurturing indeed the faith of the people of the northwest of our land, where indeed the faith remains strong to this day, thanks be to God. And so prayer and penance certainly strongly recommended by the Church as a means to grow on our spiritual journey, to become aware. And I think this is the interesting thing about just in bare feet for the few days, and it can be cold, and again the midges, the lack of sleep and the lack of food. It's quite trying and quite challenging, but the other end of it, at the time it feels a bit crazy, but at the other end of it, it's like, man, there's a lot of things I'm taking for granted here. You know, just the blessing of food, the blessing of clothing, again, the freedom, the gift of faith, and just the vulnerability of our human nature. In fact, I should have mentioned this point with Monsignor Law as well. The confessions that would be heard as part of the pilgrimage indeed are very striking and very moving, because these confessions are made in a real spirit of penitence and filled with graces and tremendous blessings for people too. So please God, the restrictions will ease once again, and these will come back once more. We'll keep it alive, certainly. We're glad to promote it here. info@lochderg.org. Again, if you want to just connect in and join with that, you get a full breakdown of the various prayers and the times and so on, and you'll be able to join in with Petticoat Parish Church as well during the course of Saturday night, Sunday morning, by way of doing the stations as they're known. Not the Stations of the Cross, but a long series of prayers that just fills out those night hours to help keep awake, but also to model that of the great saints of old in their penitence. So there you are. That's Lough Derg coming up along now these few days. Indeed, there's plenty to pray about, as we know. And we certainly are here to pray with you and for you in all those needs likewise. So it's coming up to 12 o'clock. Thanks for being part of Radio Maria. Thanks for watching in here on Facebook and YouTube too. Like, share, follow and subscribe on our social media. Help us grow and build on our internet presence as well. And we do appreciate that very much indeed. Do please stay with us now. Pray with us as well as we pause for our Angelus and our midday prayer.